Now, could the UK and Ireland lose out on hosting the Football World Cup because of a relatively small number of thugs acting up and trying to break into Wembley Stadium during the Euro 2020 final? Well, the FA, it was reported this morning, have been fined, and England will be forced to play behind closed doors due to the disorder. That question, could we lose out, was put to Simon Morton, the Chief Operating Officer of UK Sport, by the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee this morning. This is what he had to say.
Simon, you'd have seen the news story today in relation to the fine levied on the FA and also the two-match ban behind closed doors, one of which is suspended for a year, as I understand it. Is that basically the World Cup bid up in smoke?
I think it was not our finest hour as a country or as a major host of international sporting events. I was at the match that night. It was pretty horrific. It was the opposite of what we want big sporting events to feel like. I was pleased that my my daughter wasn't with me actually at the match, so it was pretty shocking and horrific. However, I don't think it's reflective of how this country organises big sporting events. But I think that most countries around the world would recognise that it is not reflective of what normally happens. In respect of the bid, specifically to the question, I think the only thing I can say there is that the UEFA president, who is of course an important person in respect to the bid process, has gone on the record as saying it will have no bearing whatsoever on our bid.
This is clearly seen as an issue, but perhaps not conclusive. England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland and Northern Ireland had worked collaboratively for a bid, and it would be amazing if England fans were to ruin it all. Well, joining me now is Ian Mearns, MP for Gateshead and a member of the all-party parliamentary group on football. Ian, welcome to the programme. In short, what do you think the chances are that this has scuppered everything for everyone?
I think it's unlikely that it has scuppered everything for everyone with regards to this bid. I think that, you know, as football supporters, we sometimes scratch our heads about these bidding processes and the decision making that therefore comes out of it. I mean, you know, the fact that the World Cup went to Russia and is going to Qatar is a good example of that very thing. And I think, you know, the question about hosting a tournament of this nature is it's about the facilities which are available and will be available by the time that the tournament is due to be played. And it has to be said, you know, with the Premier League in England and with, you know, large clubs in Scotland and facilities which are available in the Republic of Ireland in particular, you know, there are some excellent stadia to host the World Cup in 2030. So that's one of the main conditions, having good stadia which will be welcoming to fans of countries from all around the world. And I've got no doubt about it that a bid put together by the UK and Ireland could do that very, very well indeed.
I've absolutely no doubt that our stadia are fantastic, our facilities are wonderful, but you touched on it in your first answer there. These sort of bids aren't always designated based on how good the country is in terms of being able to host it. You've mentioned Russia, you've mentioned Qatar. Should we really have applied at all when clearly there's a lot of corruption in these issues? Well,
one would hope that the powers that be in world football, being cognizant of that record, are now seriously trying to clean up their act when it comes to these bidding processes, so that you know the money-filled brown envelopes aren't the determining factor. But at the same time, you know, it does sometimes leave, from a football fan's perspective, an awful lot to be desired to see how these decision-making processes pan out. But I don't think we should be deterred from putting together a bid for that, because, you know, if we didn't bid, well, what would happen would be that inferior bids from other parts of the country, from other parts of the continent in particular, would probably prevail. And that's not what we want. We want the best facilities for football fans to be used for tournaments of that nature.
Absolutely. And of course, it does seem that these big sporting events really do bring the country together. 2012 is often referred to as a big moment of hope and light for so many people in the country. How was it then that we got the security so wrong around the Euros and around letting people into stadiums, around the sort of breaches of security that we saw? We can see some of the chaos on our screens at the moment. Did we take our eye off the ball and actually give an excuse where there needed not to be an excuse?
I'm afraid to say it does very much look like the eye was taken off the ball. I think there's become an increasing expectation that football fans have, in recent years become by and large better behaved. I mean, there are of course exceptions, but I mean, I regularly attend games at St James's Park in Newcastle and away games watching Newcastle, and there's no doubt about it. The sort of level, the standards of behaviour are completely different to what they were a couple of decades ago. But that doesn't mean to say that you mustn't be vigilant and watching out for the signs. And it seems to me that the scenes that we're watching there on the TV, there must be many people amongst those crowds on Wembley Way who just turned up without tickets. And I think what we've got to do is prepare that better, and for the powers that be to work in a much more coordinated sense to prevent that sort of eventuality happening again. I mean, fans with tickets should not be getting into international final tournament games of that nature. It's just wrong, and it just does seem as though the eye was taken off the ball with regards to that particular element of security, and that could cost us. Let's hope it doesn't. It's an aberration. The FA have been fined €100,000, about £84,000. But of course, by also having a game at Wembley played behind closed doors, the losses in financial terms for the FA will be significantly more than that.
Well, let's hope that our bid can be successful despite all of those scenes that we saw. Mearns, of course, the Labour MP for Gateshead, thank you so much for joining us for that really interesting conversation.